So, and since we started this podcast, How the Heck Are We Going to Get Along, over a year and a half ago, the question I have probably gotten asked most in the past year and a half is, when are you going to have your friend Meghan McCain on? So this week, in a special Thanksgiving episode, we took last week off. We'll be taking off this week for the holiday as well. So this week, in a very special Thanksgiving episode, the episode that everyone's been waiting for, my favorite person to argue with about almost everything, my good friend Meghan McCain, this week on How the Heck Are We Gonna Get Along? People have been asking me to have you do this podcast since we started it a year and a half ago. So everyone who's listening is saying about fucking time right now. But I said, I've told people Meghan is not someone who, I would call to just ask her to come do the podcast for the hell of it. She's always got opinions. She's never going to not have an opinion.
Well, you get them for free every day when I text them to you. So
right, I know. We have So for those listening, that's what I told her. I said, let's just talk about our text chain and what we have in our text chain with our friend Josh about what's going on in the country. And the whole topic of this show is how the heck are we going to get along? And I'm going to ask you that in a minute. But I think a lot of people are I'm sure you get it too, are incredibly confused by why we're friends when, truth be told, we disagree on so much. Why do you think, besides the fact that I'm just incredibly charming? What else?
Well, it's your raw sex appeal, clearly.
Okay. But besides the obvious. It is weird because we did get introduced, a decade
years ago. It's like 12 years ago, 13
It's
years
been a long
ago.
time.
It's a really long time ago. Well,
and we sat down
trying to get us to work together.
Right. And we sat down and talked about topics. And I remember at that very lunch, both leaving incredibly fascinated by you and sort of in love, but also like, God, how in the hell can she believe some of the shit she believes?
Well, we definitely, I think, but I want to say three things because I get asked about our relationship a lot too. I think that you and I are both obsessed with politics, and I always tell people that you're like much more of a political animal than, I think anyone who had ever run for Congress obviously is, but you're very politically engaged. You have strong opinions as well, and you're a really good debater. And we spend like 50% of our time, maybe even more, talking about politics and talking about the world. And you're always a good foil for me, and I think I'm a good foil for you because I know that it's safe to fight with you. Like I can literally give any raw opinion, and there are times where I'm like, this is just for Clay. This is opinion that is literally just for you. And I know that I won't be judged, and it's like a safe space, even though I fucking hate that word, safe space. And I don't know, we both...
It's very politically correct, though. Good for you.
Yes. Also, on a personal level, you and I both know what it feels like to get the living shit beat out of us in the media for being who we are. So I think that's something, and I know when I've gone through times that have been like rough or intense, you know what it feels like, and you've been there as well. So, and also I just think the baseline of how we view the world and our families and America are the same. And why is anyone friends with anyone? Like, we just connect.
I know. I say that same thing to people. I can't define why I'm friends with my other friends other than I just like them personally. And I think most of us have friends who we don't even know what their political views are because we just don't talk about them. I happen to know yours because we do, and we bonded over that sort of give and take. But what you mentioned being beat up about things, and what I do find a little bit interesting and about the difference between how we're beat up is that I was obviously beat up in the news for being gay. Or, I wasn't beat up for being gay, but I certainly was in the closet for a period of time, took a while to figure it out myself, came out in 2008, and I kind of went through, I came out a little too early. I came out when it was still okay to make those jokes. Yeah. I'm fine. I'm not upset by them, but you kind of get crap I got crap for who I am and how I was born and you really kind of allowed yourself to be in a position where you got crap for stuff that you could have chosen to just not say. You could have had the opinions that you have, but chosen to not say them on TV, but you kind of put yourself there because you thought it was important to talk about them. Why? Tell people why you thought going on The View and being the conservative person on that show and the most visible conservative, arguably, in the country for several years was important.
Well, I mean, it's not even possible for me to censor myself or like,
amen.
Yeah, like I want to, which I've certainly been in situations would have been more helpful. Like it's just not my nature. It's not my personality. I think there's a really lucrative, and this is not a judgment on any women who do this because like fantastic on you, but there's like an extremely lucrative, successful space in television for very inoffensive women, for women who are like polite and beautiful and talk about being a mom and let's all just get along and, you know, let's like laugh and dance and drink wine. And that's great. Like amazing. It's not something that personally appeals to me when I am consuming television, but it's a huge market. And is there a sliding doors part of me sometimes that is like, if I had just been like a cute mom and someone who, sort of neutered down my opinions on television, would my life look different? Yeah, I'd probably be bored out of my mind.
How do you even imagine that? I can't imagine that with you. I can't imagine that alternative.
I would have to like reanimate my DNA. Like I'm just a really opinionated, strong person, but with strong opinions comes strong reactions. And, I always feel like I'm saying what a lot of people are just thinking and maybe are too, worried about like the public backlash to say or think. I don't care. I'm very proud of the work I've done and continue to do, hopefully. And, I think there's a lot of people in America that agree with me. And yeah, go ahead.
Well, I set you up for that question because I expected I know the answer already in part. But talk about the importance of having the voice at the table, because I don't have to tell you or anybody else that there were many times that I watched the show or hell was even there visiting where I would sit in your dressing room and go, shit, what? Did she say that? I wish she hadn't said that, or I wish she hadn't had that opinion on gun control or whatever else it was. But you'd come back and I'd say, why the fuck did you say that? And you'd say, somebody had, I mean, talk about the importance of having that conservative voice in a panel of people who otherwise kind of all agree with each other, and why it's important for us to listen to the other side.
I mean, I think people like to pretend in mainstream media that Republicans don't exist. It's just easier to have every network not have any, or to have the like Republican du jour, which is like a Republican who once voted for Bush when I was in middle school and like still for whatever reason brands himself as a Republican because you can make more money saying that than by being a Democrat. I don't have a ton of respect. Actually, I have no respect for people who do that. And my favorite line is that I didn't leave the party left me. Well, some of us are still trying to like reform within the party and still try and make a difference. And what's confusing to me about things like the Lincoln Project are, there's nothing Republican or conservative about anything. You're literally giving money to Democrats. Like, what about being pro-life? What about fiscal conservatism? What about like the main tenets of being a conservative? Did that just blow out the window too? So I think for me, it was just important to show a real conservative. I'm a real one. And I got a lot of heat, and I've certainly gotten a lot of shit from a lot of different people, but the flip side is I also have a lot of trust with conservatives in the country, and I don't, like, this isn't just like anecdotal. There's like data and research that my agents have done that back it up. And conservatives know that I am a real one and that I wasn't embarrassed to be one on TV. I wasn't like rejecting where I came from to mainstream myself. The other flip side of that is there are circles I can no longer go into right now. There are places that just like it's not socially acceptable to have Meghan McCain in because
like what?
There's certain like media places, and I used to like in the beginning of my career when we first met, I would be invited to like a lot of like, proofy media parties, which I don't like going to anyway, so it doesn't matter. But like there are people in media who don't want to touch me anymore and don't want to be friends with me and don't want to know me. And a big part of that is my politics. And I think people just sort of assumed that I was like squishy and in the middle for a long time. And that's very acceptable. But being super pro-life and pro-Second Amendment and being against BLM are not things that you can think and believe and be accepted in some spaces. And I don't give a shit, like, at all. But it's interesting to me that I can't name one other mainstream Republican not on Fox News who is sort of defiant in their politics in the way that I am. And it makes me sad.
So, but how was it possible for you to not be embarrassed at times when sometimes there are things that are going on in your party that I know you think are nuts. I mean, I think that there are people right now who are in your party who you openly have admitted to me in the past are just batshit. So how do you separate those? Because you did not support Trump, never.
No.
Don't like the Trumps at all. And I could probably go off a list of 15, 20 other Republicans who you would like to see just sort of fade into obscurity. So how can you still answer this question that many people ask, how can you still be a Republican when the most prominent faces of your party are the Madison Cawthorns and Marjorie Taylor Greenes and Matt Gaetz and Donald Trumps?
I mean, my flip question is, how can you be a Democrat when Ilhan Omar and AOC are the loudest, most public? I mean, AOC is like on the cover of Vanity Fair and going to the Met Ball. Like the most.
Right. So I can answer that question, and you know I can, and I know you can answer it too. So tell me what your answer is, though.
First and foremost, as crazy as I think people like Marjorie Taylor Greene are, and I do, and I think she's actually very dangerous. But she's also been stripped of her committees. She has no legislative power whatsoever, which I do think is the difference between like my most crazy and your most crazy, with all due respect. And I think for me, A, my values are all the same, and B.
Well, hold on a second. Your values are similar. They're not all the same. I mean, I'm going to protect you a little bit by saying you don't think your values are not the same as Madison Cawthorn's and Marjorie Taylor Greene.
I don't mean it about them. I just mean like my core values that I believe in haven't changed just because they're elected. Right. No, I mean there's many. Obviously, I don't.
You obviously. I mean, I can't think of a person who was more pissed on January 6th than you were.
Yeah, like I'm not like all the normal mainstream things. I'm not. But the flip side of it is like I'm also like there's so many things that like repulse me about the left right now. So I don't know. I sort of accept my crazies and try and think of, I don't take them seriously. Maybe that is maybe that's ill-advised, because I didn't take Trump seriously for a long time. But I also think like within my party, I try and look at, they're a symptom of something bigger. These people aren't getting elected because there's not like this root of darkness going on in the country, in my opinion. And I would rather have my darkness out in front of me. I would rather know what the crazies in America are thinking and doing rather than having it like repressed to the bottom.
But you're okay with them being in Congress?
No, of course not. I mean, I would love to, of course not. I would love to have a normal mainstream, and by normal, I just mean like, again, like not conspiratorial, not radical. I would
not trying to take a gun onto the floor of the house.
Exactly. Like not, like, and I also just hate stunts. Like in general, I hate political stunts. And I find that like, it's just a lot of stunts. It's a lot of like going on the floor to like scream and make a scene, but like pass a fucking law, all of you on the radical left and the radical right. And, but I don't I just think they're like jokes, like if that makes sense. Like I'm not
I agree.
But I'm not going to let like 5 radical crazy people let me leave my party, if that makes sense.
But are they, I mean, like, but look at people like Liz Cheney, who I know you don't agree with on everything. But how do you feel when someone like her gets kicked out or gets called not a Republican?
Makes me very sad and very angry. I really like
What should she do?
I don't think she gives a fuck. I mean, from what I know about her, I don't know her. We have exchanged emails and direct messages and emails with her staff because I was defending her on television. I like her. I have always liked her. I'm always going to have an affinity for like somebody who has a famous dad who's making it on their own. And I think she has like balls of steel, which I really respect, obviously. I don't think that, whether these people like it or not, you can't actually throw people out of the party. You can't actually take her membership away. I think they tried in Wyoming or they voted.
Well, I guess they don't refer to her as one. But so if she runs in Wyoming, is she going to win? And what's it going to say if she doesn't?
I haven't been following her race closely enough. I know that there's a lot of people trying to primary her. Probably, yep. I just expect a lot.
And I think Trump has endorsed one of them at least. So regardless of that, and I don't agree. I don't know the details of Wyoming and whether you can run as an independent if you lose the primary, like you can in Alaska. But do you think that the majority of Republican electorate in primaries thinks like you and Liz Cheney, or do you think that the majority of Republican electorate in primaries is going to go for the Madison Cawthorns and the Marjorie Taylor Greenes?
I think it depends which state you're in, and I think it depends which district you're in. I really, like I said, I really like and respect Liz Cheney. It makes me really sad that when we talk about like being big tent Republicans, which people like Kevin McCarthy do all the time, it has to extend to people who come out viscerally against Trump as well. And that seems to be like an issue for leadership. I think it's toxic. I think it's dangerous. I also think that what's helping Republicans right now is just how crazy and far gone Democrats have gone under President Biden. And
you want me to take that bait so bad. I'm going to take it.
Well, people are always like, people ask this question. Maybe I'm like being long-winded. As crazy as my party is, and there's certainly much to be like analyzed all day long, and I absolutely hate Trump. I didn't vote for him. I never have, thank God. I mean, I never would. And if he becomes the nominee again, then we can have a whole other conversation, because then like I may just have to like, I don't know what the hell I'm going to do, because I just can't do this again. Like that's how I feel. Like I just can't do this again.
Well, I thought you were buying an island we were all going to.
Yeah. Nova Scotia, the UK, like where should we all go? I actually don't know if it would be like safe for me if Trump gets elected.
But like, you think you see on my side the same thing I see on your side.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I agree that my party has got a lot of divisions, and I will be one of the first to say we've got to do a better job of winning, and I have my opinions on why we didn't do as well in Virginia. But to me, I look on the right and see people being way worse than what my far left side is doing. You see it the other way, and that's one of the places that we don't agree. But you think that so talk about that, and what scares you most about the folks on the left.
I mean, in comparison to the crazy right, or
sure, however you want to.
There's a lot of things that scare me.
I mean, do you think socialism is really something that people are trying to bring to the country?
I do, and I think.
Do you really?
Too. I do, and I think Marxism as well, and I think that,
as in the government controls everything.
I think that there is an idea that, and this is one thing that during COVID really became, it was something I believed, and now it's something that like I feel in a really visceral way. There is an entire swath of the country, and they are liberal, who want to be controlled by the government, who are comfortable in a space, listen to me, who are comfortable in a space where the government tells them what to do all day, every day, and runs every element and aspect of their life, which has been shocking to me because I think it's A, innately un-American, B, it's anti-freedom, and C, there's like this radical, just let me finish, then I'll tell you the answer. I have been it has blown me away that this like radical idea that the answer to everything is the big government will save you, and they're going to cuddle you and make sure everything's fine and tell you everything to do from the moment you wake up in the morning, wear masks forever, we're going to tell your children what to do. Now, infamously, you know, the line that killed, that saved that really helped Youngkin was when McAuliffe said that, you know, the parents shouldn't be involved, and I'm paraphrasing, parents shouldn't be involved with their education of their children. Like, all of that is like, it's like the stuff that I thought was happening has now.
Right, but this is why, what you're saying is why I'm going to disagree with you, because I don't think there is a push there is a large swath of Americans who want the government to control them. I think that sort of thing is a fever dream that folks
New
on
Yorkers
the far right.
and San Francisco and like.
But I don't think that people want that. I think when I've asked people in the past, so when you say you're afraid of socialism, what do you think that means? What you just gave is usually the answer I get. But I think what most progressives like me want are things like universal health care, which I know we disagree on, but which doesn't necessarily have the government control your life. It just gives you access to something that really shouldn't be up for the richest people to have the best health care. And free education. Childhood education, I mean, free education K through 12 is a socialist policy, right? Because the government's providing something. I don't think that people want the government telling them what to do or controlling their lives. And arguably, maybe that's why Youngkin did have an easier time of beating Terry McAuliffe. Are we seeing two parties go too far to either side and and it's just a race to see who can make the moderates think they're the least crazy?
This is where I'm going to punt back to you.
Go on.
Democrats' numbers are absolutely cratering and flatlining. Biden's numbers are flatlining. Vice President Harris's numbers are a joke. If things are going so well, and these policies are something that you think, as you said, we're just talking about healthcare, we're just talking about education. If that's really what Democrats and the left are proposing, why is everyone in this position? We're talking about and again, I don't have notes in front of me, but we're talking about the possibility of absolutely historic numbers in 2022 from the likes that I never thought I would see in my generation in midterms and then in 2024, because I believe Democrats have already blown it so much. And I believe that President Biden ran as a moderate and is now in some kind of, you want to talk about fever dreams, this progressive, I don't even know. I can't even imagine why he thinks that going as far left as he has governing is like a winnable future. But the American public is not liking it. And
do you think he went too far left? I mean, the initial plan was for $3 trillion, but we're now at $1.5 trillion for Build Back Better, right?
And I think it's everything from his policies to his rhetoric it's been so shocking to me. It's just
that's got to be confusing for you because you like him as a person.
I do.
And you really were excited. I don't even know if you voted for him because I never even asked you.
I didn't.
But
I wrote in. I didn't vote for either of them.
But you certainly wanted him to win over Donald Trump because you like him as a person. You talked about that. You've been family friends for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, it was really a struggle during the election because it was like this battle between my head and my heart. And policy-wise, there were many things Trump did that I liked policy-wise, but I thought that his character and his rhetoric were so incendiary. It was ripping the country apart from the inside out. And I was just, live here right outside DC, and I drove to work in the morning of the insurrection, and texted my executive producer saying something insane is happening. I could just feel the energy, and there were just crazy flags and trucks everywhere and people screaming. And then to experience the insurrection so close and so firsthand, I don't think the country could have withstood Trump again. That being said, I feel fucking lied to by Democrats and by...
How so? So tell me that, because you do love Joe Biden or have loved Joe Biden, but what is it that makes you so bothered by his presidency right now?
I was done after Afghanistan, as you know, because it was very, very heated. I mean, not disrespectful, but it's one of the most.
That's probably our biggest one, right?
That is probably our biggest one, actually. Yeah. Can you admit that you were wrong? That it had more of an impact?
No, I'm not willing to admit that yet, but neither would you if you were wrong, so it's okay. I think it certainly lasted. The impact lasted longer than I expected it to, because I did not expect Americans to have the attention span that they did when it came to Afghanistan. But I would even argue that were it not brought up because of this little light moment with us, it's probably not something we'd be talking about today. You'd have bigger beef with his Build Back Better plan and other policies, and might not be. I guess my point is, I don't think that in 2022, Afghanistan's going to be on the top of people's minds when they go back and vote.
I do think it's going to be something that's brought up in a debate or, I think that they are going to, because even the things that we're seeing right now, there's hunger, little girls are being trafficked at 9 years old. I saw this video on Twitter, and I believe it was a CNN journalist that tweeted it. That was a little 9-year-old girl whose dad was selling her to an old man for food for their family. I think there's going to be, and is, the greatest humanitarian catastrophe of not my lifetime, but maybe in the last 20 years. I think the vacuum that is being left, much like what happened in Iraq with ISIS, is going to happen there and is happening. And I think that Americans can forget and move on from a lot of things. Americans, as you know, you live in North Carolina, and I can say this as a generalization, are patriotic and love the military. And when we see people falling out of planes and hear stories about translators being abandoned and us leaving our allies after 20 years and God knows how many deployments. I mean, I was trying to count the deployments between my brothers. It's not something I'm going to forgive or forget. And I think there is a misunderstanding. And again, that's not directed at you because I don't put you in this category, but how many people that work in media know someone in the military or are related to someone in the military? And understand the grave ramifications. Like, try recruiting.
Well, you know I am. You know my brother served
You
2
are.
tours
Yes,
in Iraq.
that's not-
But I'll tell you what, and I told you this before, but we have it out right now again, is that even he said, what else were we going to do? And he voted for Trump the first time, not the second time. But he said, what else were we going to do? He said we should have left in 2012 after we got Osama.
Not pull out with the way. Even okay, so I get the people who wanted to leave. I've heard that argument many times, and I respect it, especially coming from people in the military. Then you should have executed it when you left in a way that we didn't just abandon people and leave them there, which is something that definitely could have happened. And I am certainly not a military strategist, but I watched many videos and podcasts from veterans during that time, and respected people. There's this guy, Jocko. He's like a very famous, I believe Navy SEAL. He has a podcast, and a bunch of my friends listened to it. And he had this video that was talking about what Biden should have done and said, and what he said. And I can't repeat it at the time because I don't remember it verbatim, but it was what I wish President Biden had done and said.
Do you worry at all about people getting into the country from that country without being vetted? That perhaps terrorists or people who have...
You mean in our country?
Yeah, coming into our country may have gotten into our country without being vetted, or that we might be at risk because of that?
Yeah, and do you know what would have been great? Having a strategy to...
Right, but the reason I asked that is so I could throw it back in your face and say... and say that, is that not the argument for why there is so much bureaucracy for those who did help us, for those who did help the American military there? If you were a translator for the American military in 2009, and then you did that for 2 years, but then you left, it's going to take a while for us to make sure that between 2009 and 2011, you still stayed, you're still not someone who coming to this country. I guess it's both ways. Either you're not vetting them enough, and therefore dangerous people are getting in, or you're vetting them too much, and then people who should have gotten in are stuck there because they're still going through the vetting process. Isn't it like a he can't win situation?
No, I mean, I think innocent people were left. So, I mean, again, like the videos that just made me sick of like people trying to lift babies over walls to get out. The video of the guy falling out of the plane, being so desperate because those people know what happens in Afghanistan when we're not there. I was one of the people, and you can call me a neocon, which people have in the past, where I believe that we should have a presence there in the way that we do in like places like Korea. That I thought that like the bandwidth and the money and the expense to keep a small presence there had no fatalities there in like, and again, I don't know the exact number, but like 18 months or 2 years before we had left. I think there was a way to maintain a presence and stability there without just pulling out in this insane way, and it would have been fine. Okay, if you disagree with me and you think that we should leave altogether, again, have a strategy where it's not just abject chaos everywhere and innocent soldiers are being blown up, including a 23-year-old woman who I looked at her Instagram page and her social media page afterward, and I cried because it just made me so sad. She was so young and idealistic. Like, these are unnecessary deaths, and I do blame President Biden. And then to put a cap on it, I also blame President Biden for having conversations with those families, and the families giving quotes to the media saying that all he did was talk about his son Bo, which again, it's a great tragedy, and his son Bo died of the same brain cancer my dad did, so I completely understand the pain and anguish.
I think he's trying to empathize with him and say he understands what it's like to lose a child, right?
Well, it was not blown up
so what could Democrats, should Democrats' argument if they want to?
But just to put a cap on it, they blew it all the way around. The strategy, and then even afterwards, something as simple as consoling the families. And I just was saddened and horrified by the whole thing. And I remember talking to a friend of my dad's who was a high level person in the Senate. And he said to me, "Thank God your dad is dead and not here to see this." And so that is where and that's it. That has been it for me with President Biden.
Well, I do know that you have not come back since.
Sorry.
I do know that. But what could or should Democrats have done? I mean, is it okay to assume that a Democrat thinks that he handled it wrong? And I'm not one of those. I don't think it was handled beautifully, but I definitely see that it was a no-win situation all around. The response from a lot of them would have been to your last argument, about he had no strategy, a lot of Democrats turn around and say, yeah, but this was, and they'd be right about it, this was Trump. Trump's the one who said, we're pulling out, we're going to have an end date, we'll have all the military out by X date. And Biden really just followed through with the plan that Trump had already made and promised in when they did their meeting in Qatar. So is that the kind of argument that Democrats should make? You love doing strategy. Is that the kind of argument they should make? Or should they have said, if they believed he had done something wrong, oops, we're sorry? I mean, is there any way for someone to do something that either party believes is not right and win you back by saying, oops, this is what we should have done, or have a different argument for why what they did was right?
So your question is, if going forward, what can Democrats do to win me back on this issue?
I mean, maybe not on that issue, but yeah, I was asking it about that issue, but all of them in general. I mean, it just seems like a lot of people have made up their minds on things and aren't going to change them.
Look, I am guilty, as many people are, of being extremely tribal and reactive when it comes to politics, particularly anything having to do with war and foreign policy. It was a very, very, very important part of my family and my dad's politics. I grew up talking about it a lot, and it was, I didn't spend we're up on Thanksgiving on Thursday, and I didn't spend like the last, I want to say 6 Thanksgivings of my life, maybe 7, because my dad was spending Thanksgiving with troops overseas. So like, and it's not that, I'm sure you feel the same way. Like most Americans feel connected to the military. I just think that the ideology, which I still strongly believe in, it's dead on both sides. I mean, it's like, neocons are, it's like me and the like writers at Commentary Magazine. Like we're like the last ones that believe in America first foreign policy. So you're right when you say that like Trump would have done it. Yeah, I didn't agree with his foreign policy either, except on Israel. I liked that. But to win me back, I mean, I get very tribal, and I'm very, I don't say I'm like angry, but I feel like I have hit a wall, and I think, I'm not going to speak for you, but I think you have too in a lot of ways, where I feel like
I've certainly hit a wall because I don't think what the right shit's getting done, for sure. And I think you agree with that, right?
Well, I also think that I feel like, and again, I'm in a very unique and very specific situation, so take that with a grain of salt. I feel like I have played ball with Democrats. I have debated, I have argued, I have come to the table. And the response is, which just happened recently, is we're so glad that there are no Republicans around. The panel is perfect now that there's no Republican on it. We have a perfect panel, which is something that a co-host of mine said last week. And it went on Twitter. Like, a perfect place in America is a place where no Republicans have a voice or a spot at the table, metaphorically and literally. Do you think that Democrats feel the same way about Republicans? Even though they may not have as many opportunities on mainstream TV, in your opinion, do you think that a lot of Democrats would believe that in certain circles around this country, in certain areas, especially rural areas, that Democrats are... There's no room for Democrats?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's horrible on both sides. I don't live that way. Clearly, you and I are extremely close. And I have... I'm not trying to say this like in a way that sounds like pejorative, but like I really do have a lot of friends who think differently than I do politically. I think part of that is just like living in New York for so long. Part of that is like I'm contrarian and I like being able to debate with friends.
You're telling me you like to argue?
I love it. It's my favorite.
And you'd think in all these years I would have figured that out. I didn't know that. But you also live in, not just in New York now, you live in a very liberal area. Northern Virginia is not anybody's idea of a conservative region.
Now? Like I would say after...
Well, but that was what I was going to ask you.
Yeah.
So you sat through this Virginia thing that everybody, I think a lot of Democrats were shocked by. Hell, I think some Republicans were even shocked by. What happened?
I mean, I live, like you said, I do live in Northern Virginia. I live like right close to DC. I feel like I knew a lot about this because obviously just living here. I think a lot of things happened. I think Virginia closed down the schools for too long and parents got very angry just
for COVID.
Yeah, for COVID. And then stayed closed when private schools were opening. And I think, and Mary Catherine Ham was talking about this on CNN. She said that, there were like teachers saying things like, you just want to come open so you can get your babysitters back, like being very, dismissive of parents' feelings. about their children and, the great strain that Zoom learning had on, we're doing a Zoom right now.
I did the Zoom learning. It was strain. It was a lot of strain involved.
Yeah, it sounds awful. It sounds like torture. So I think that happened. I think Democrats, like I said, I think McAuliffe saying that thing where he was like, parents shouldn't have the teachers, the ones that have something to do. Like,
what could their argument? What could Democrats? I'm not asking you to strategize for the other team, but I mean, it sounds. I think a lot of Democrats would argue that Republicans ran on an anti-Democrat message. What could Democrats have done to win in Virginia? Who messed up? Did Democrats mess up, or did Republicans just do an incredibly good job?
I think both. I think McAuliffe was a terrible candidate, and I know that.
But it wasn't just the governor, though. I mean, that state House of Delegates got quite a shellacking. Democrats did there too.
Yeah.
So, regardless of what you voted on the top of the ticket, a lot of these places in Virginia that had voted blue in the past, I mean, it was a big switch, right? So, what did they? What, in your opinion, what was done wrong? How could Democrats win Virginia back in 2 years if they wanted to, or can they, in your opinion?
Well, I mean, I think you'd have to be a fool not to see that a state that Biden won by 10 points a year ago now switching in such a, intense dramatic way this quickly. Things are going wrong. I love James. One of the things we should also focus on this podcast a little bit about the things you and I agree on. And one of them is our deep, unending, intense love for James Carville. I'm obsessed with James Carville.
Another Politicon family member.
I worship him. Like, I think he's so brilliant. And I did before he became as you can attest to, the person that he is now.
Yes, you've always liked James Carville.
I love him. I love his wife.
I think you want to be him a little bit when you grow up.
I kind of do. James.
I mean, you kind of already are. Say exactly what you think and give zero fucks about it. That's James Carville. It's also a little Meghan McCain.
I need to get a Cajun accent and wear a sweatshirt and a baseball cap. When he goes on TV, it's like he just doesn't give a shit. He
has no fucks to give.
These sweatshirts. He's like Louisiana sweatshirts, and he's like, the stupid wokeness. That's why we lost. And I'm like, preach, James.
Well, but is that really it? I mean, first of all, AOC's response to that was nobody used the word woke anymore, which I'm not exactly sure how that responds to the argument.
Bill Maher went off on that this week, and I loved it. He was like, yeah, the way to win back voters is by telling them that they're uncool and old and stupid.
But do Democrats have an argument that even if the woke policy, I'm sorry, does AOC have an argument that the way to win, though, is to focus on the more progressive ideas, the universal health care and whatnot? Does she have a point?
I hope that all Democrats do for the next 4 years, for the next 50 years. I hope the only thing they do is focus on how everything is racist and you're wrong and I'm uncool and you have to be like the wokest person in the land. AOC can say that. I think she gave an interview in the New York Times, which I haven't read yet, but it's in my queue of things to read, that she was saying, they didn't invite me to Virginia to campaign.
Yes, she did, yeah.
Yeah, and
it was in yesterday.
I mean, try that experiment. If that's what went wrong in Virginia is that there was not enough squad members campaigning with rural Virginians who, were concerned about their children being taught critical race theory. Sure, send them out there. Great, go talk to these. I love that.
That's sort of the same thing I said about Trump.
Yeah.
By all means. So, but I will say this, because I think the same thing that happened in Virginia probably happened a year and a half ago in Georgia, right? And Georgia flipped blue in the Senate, 2 seats blue. Your home state in the past 2 years.
Arizona too.
Right, yeah, I was going to say your home state flipped 2 seats in the Senate blue, and Democrats have cheered, et cetera. When I ask you, do you think that Virginia will stay red? I'm also essentially asking you if you think that Georgia will stay blue, or do you think Arizona will stay blue? Or do these things flip that much?
I pay obviously much more attention to Arizona than I do to Georgia. The Cook report said a few days ago that Arizona for Senator Mark Kelly, that famous astronaut.
Now a toss-up, right?
Yeah. No, that it's now it's even switched to more than likely to, so more than likely for him to lose his seat. And he could, they could pretty much run any Republican, I think, that's not a I don't know. Arizona's politics are so cheap.
Maybe it's time for you to go down there, get a Senate seat.
Absolutely not. Because I'm not a Trumper, and much like, normal people, couldn't get through a primary.
So what happens then? Let's talk Arizona, because you made a point. What happens if Arizona nominates someone like Kelly Ward? Crazy as hell.
I mean, then
does Mike Crowley still have a chance?
I don't think so. I think if it's a Kelly Ward, no, I'm sorry. I don't think she has a chance.
Okay, so it's you think it's Republicans to lose, but you're not confident necessarily that Republicans won't lose it on their own.
I think that he will lose as long as it is not an absolute batshit crazy person, which again, that I won't even say her name, but feel free to Google all the things that she believes. I also think that a big thing that I have been saying to a bunch of friends of mine in different circles who are in politics in different ways is, and it's very simple, just be normal. That's it. Just be a normal, not radical, crazy person.
Okay, so I've heard you say, by all means, Democrats keep using folks like AOC.
By the way, I'm being facetious.
No, I know you're being facetious. Right. As a Republican, you like the idea of Democrats using AOC more often because to you think that helps you as a Republican win. You think that Mark Kelly will lose unless Republicans nominate someone like Kelly Ward. So I guess for me as a Democrat, I should be rooting for Kelly Ward in the same way you're rooting for AOC, right?
This is all back to democracy, so no, we shouldn't be.
Right? No. But that's the next part I was going to ask is: Are we essentially just whoever nominates? Are we at a point now where it's whoever nominates the least crazy person wins? In a lot of places, in places like North Carolina, Georgia, Virginia, Arizona, places where the vote is kind of split evenly.
I do think that. I really do.
So you're telling me you think there are moderates in this country then?
I don't even think it's moderate. You can't even describe it as moderate. It's just not batshit insane. It's just not the wokest of the land or some stop the steal conspiratorial QAnon. The baseline of what I want in normal has the bandwidth for it has stretched so far out where I'm just don't be a QAnon conspiracy theorist and don't be a socialist radical anti-Semite.
But don't be but now I'm going to give you real shit because don't be a stop the steal 2020 was stolen type person.
I hate that.
Right. But a huge chunk of the party right now in the House, at least the Senate aside, in the House, the Republican Party, a huge chunk of them seem to be afraid to speak out against that type of thing.
I know, I don't understand it. I just saw a clip of Ted Cruz this weekend. I don't understand it because I think it's such the law of depleting. There's a term for it.
I don't know smart things like that.
To me, it's so dated because at the end of the day, it's I do believe that Trump people, for the most part, if a DeSantis runs, they're going to vote for him ultimately, especially if it's against a Kamala or
Ben Sass or something. Yeah. Well, you mean in the general?
Yeah, in the general election. So I do think they'll go no place. The tricky part for both parties is basically you and me, this demographic of white college educated voters, particularly women as well in the suburbs. That is a demographic that's really up for grabs. Obviously went for Biden. Now we're seeing, women like me go for Youngkin. And I think that stop the steal for me is if you're a conspiratorial person who believes that the election was stolen and you like that man with the horns, we have a problem.
Well, I would agree. I'm not necessarily up for grabs because I look at the House side and I see, okay, there are two people on the House side who are willing to acknowledge that a violent video was not a good idea. Cheney and Kinzinger in the Republican side were willing to say, yes, that was unacceptable. But on the Democratic side, even if you were to say you wanted to take out some of even the progressives like Pramila Jayapal ended up voting for the infrastructure package. So I don't know that my party has gone quite as crazy as yours has. I think there's crazy all around, but I think that for whatever reason, there are not as many people in the Republican Party like you as there are in the Democratic Party like me. And you probably don't agree with that, but that's how I see it.
I think that there's some of the rhetoric coming out of the squad and is dangerous in a way that also has real life ramifications. Like when you see, obviously what happened on January 6th, and you see some political violence that has happened. You also see political violence that's happened, in my opinion, as a result of a lot of rhetoric that the squad has helped mainstream, especially concerning anti-Semitism, especially concerning Jewish Americans. I mean, I have met and spoken with Joey Borgen, who is a victim of the Jewish hate crime that happened last May in Times Square. He had the living shit beat out of him because he was wearing a yarmulke in public. I have met with his parents. He did not meet with Chuck Schumer. He did not meet the senators in the state, did not feel the need to reach out to him and his family. I think that if you were any other...
you can't possibly be saying that Chuck Schumer is anti-Semitic.
No, I'm saying that the rhetoric coming out... I'm saying I'm disappointed he didn't reach out to him. But I'm saying that the rhetoric of the squad, I think there's a direct correlation between the things that are being said about pro-Israel Jews and Israel and the spike in hate crimes that we're seeing against Jewish Americans and the rise in hate crimes towards Jews all over the world, but particularly in the United States of America. So when people talk to me about Marjorie Taylor Greene, yes, obviously, I think she's a wackadoo. I can't exactly point to one fine linear thing of something she has said, although she is an anti-Semite herself, so maybe she is.
I was going to say, the two of them have that in common. Some of them have that in common.
Yes, and it's very scary and dangerous. But again, for me, what I prefer is the lunatics out in front with their tiki torches saying Jews will not replace us. Jews have space lasers, instead of this academic, all about the Benjamins. Jews are hypnotizing the world. That's what Ilhan Omar has said in the past. The things that they are saying, and I do a lot of work in this space. I just gave a speech with Senator Joe Lieberman.
You just got an award also from
I did, and I'm giving another talk the night before Thanksgiving with a very significant Jewish organization. The most speeches I'm getting booked for right now, by far, have to do with the space of combating anti-Semitism. And I feel like it is a space that sadly, the left has a really hard time speaking out in the same way against Jewish hate crimes and anti-Semitism that they do. And all hate crimes are horrific, obviously. I mean, full stop, the end. But it's much easier to say, Black Lives Matter, Asian Lives Matter, than it is to say anything against anti-Semitism. And
why? Why do you think that's happening?
I have absolutely no idea. It is beyond my comprehension. I think it's sick and gross. But I do know that this activism space for me, I am not Jewish, but I'm happy to be an ally and in the Jewish
practically
community.
have a Jewish uncle, your Uncle Joe.
Yes. But the fact that it is the most amount of work I am doing right now in regards to speaking engagements and activism, it is what I'm being asked to do the most. It is what I am booked to do the most, says that there's a vacuum of not enough people that are willing to come into this space and say, hey, full stop, anti-Semitism's horrific, and we shouldn't conflate it with having policy positions differences with your image of Palestine. And I blame a lot on the squad. I really do. I blame their rhetoric. I think that some of the things that they have mainstreamed is more dangerous than I could have fathomed. The fact that I worry about Jewish friends of mine wearing their Jewish star necklaces or wearing their yarmulkes out in places like New York City scares the shit out of me. And the reason why it's so important to me is because I do think it's a space that's not getting enough attention. So when people say your party's crazy, yes, of course. But there's and again, I don't remember exactly, but it's 115% spike in hate crimes against Jewish Americans in the past 2 years. There are ramifications for rhetoric and signals. And
there's hate crimes against people for believing anything that another group doesn't agree with. I mean, obviously, yes, the hate crimes against Jewish Americans, but we see hate crimes against people because they're conservative. We see hate crimes against people because they're progressive. What has happened to the country where we now are the congressman from Michigan who's gotten death threats because he voted for the infrastructure package. We see the attorney for Kyle Rittenhouse has gotten death threats from both sides because, one, he defended Kyle Rittenhouse in the first place, which of course pissed off a lot of people on the left, and because he came out and condemned Matt Gaetz and Paul Gosar and Donald Trump Jr. for trying to support Kyle Rittenhouse afterwards and called them idiots for that. And now, of course, he's getting death threats from the right. When did a difference of opinion become such fodder for just vitriol. Did that change recently? How long has that been going on? Because I don't remember it always happening.
I think Trump opened up Pandora's box. And I think a lot of people, and then I think that other politicians went with it. I think when you see Maxine Waters saying, if you see someone from the Trump administration out in public, get up on them and accost them. Obviously, there's mob mentality. It's very dangerous. I think he opened it up and then nobody stopped it. And I think it's horrific. I hate it. I think it is un-American. I think that if people can't come together, and again, you're extremely...
I was going to say, how have we not killed each other?
I don't know how you and I have. I told you a long time ago.
but seriously, how have we? Because
well, I love
we do it face to face. I know, but we do it. We talk face to face, one on one.
Yeah.
And I would argue, and I've said this 100 times on this program, and I know I've heard you say it before too. I wouldn't get as angry with someone who disagreed with me if I was talking to my neighbor. And I could probably turn around and have a civil disagreement with him about a policy, and then have him go back and, I don't know, he may be going back in his house, getting on social media and just doxing somebody who he disagrees with. We don't do it face to face.
That's true.
We know how to have, we've got home training. We know how to behave face to face or over the phone even. Why can't we do it? How is it possible for someone to hate you so much when they don't know you? But they just know you from an hour a day.
Because we've turned into tribal people. I also think on a personal level, one of the things that at least I really appreciate about our relationship, and I think we should add Josh into this too, because our friend that we all text every day, all of us can concede when we're wrong. And when our side has messed up, I have certainly been wrong about many things in the past.
I will say that's one thing a lot of people don't know about you, and I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of shit from people on the left for defending you for this, but I will do it anyway. You do, maybe not always come back on TV the next day and apologize, but you have. But you usually are quite good about saying, oh, well, that was not right about that. And so I definitely agree with you there.
I don't want to hurt anyone. I don't want anyone to be hurt. I don't want to disrespect anyone, and I don't want to be disrespected. I think there's like a baseline of things that you and I and our group of friends do very well and have learned to do well. We are also older. I mean, I don't know if that has something to do with it. Like, I'm 37, you're 30. And, I think that it's also something, I think it's just like how all of us were raised as well. But I really, really hate it. And I actually think there needs to be some kind of like mandate where people in Congress are forced to socialize on both sides in one way or another. And if that's like, I don't know, like a dinner or whatever, I think when you don't know people, you don't treat them like humans. Or some people do. I don't think you and I do that. And
why don't people vote though? You talk to anybody in the world in person, face to face, and whether you agree with them or not, they will say that they're tired of all the hysteria and hyperbole, but no one goes to the polls to vote for the candidate who is willing to turn the volume down. Why?
I don't know the answer to that.
I mean, the people get out the vote for the ones who tend to be the Matt Gaetz of the world. Madison Cawthorn can turn out the vote on the right.
Yeah.
And arguably, people on the far left can turn out the vote better on the far left than people who are not using Twitter or social media as well.
I don't know the answer to that. I'll never know the answer to that because,
and that's why you won't run for Senate in Arizona. Is that it?
I mean, there's no pathway for McCain in politics. I mean, it is a damaged time in America, and MAGA still rules the Republican Party. It certainly rules it in its primaries. I have people within the Arizona Republican Coalition who tweet me, and the actual AZ GOP Twitter account tweets me some of the horrific, grossest, insane.
I mean, girl, you give it back to him, though. So
yeah, I mean, I can resist anything except temptation. Isn't that the?
Yes, you have no. I have so many times wanted to take your phone away from you. Yes. And I know I've called a few times. I've been like, I feel that what I just saw on TV is going to get a tweet from you. I'm going to try to call you and stop you before it happens.
I always want to quit Twitter. I just haven't.
You always say that. You're like, I'm going to go up to Montana for the weekend. I'm going to turn my phone off. And I'm like, well, let's see. Josh, that'll last 2 days.
I know. it's like having one Pringle. Like it's like you can't have like one Pringle. I can't.
Why'd you name your book Bad Republican? Because people should go check it out, not just because it's an important book, because you mentioned me in it, and of course we gotta definitely buy it on Audible. It's available on Audible. It's an audiobook. You can hear the dulcet tones of Meghan McCain's voice on Audible. It's called Bad Republican, but you named it that because
I named it because I thought, first of all, it's what my agent always calls me. Is like, you're my bad Republican, and partly it's because when I was on The View, I was obviously like the villain and the bad one. But then when I go in conservative circles, because I hate Trump, I'm the bad one. You're like the odd one out. So there's like no space where I'm a accepted conservative or Republican except on your podcast, Clay. But
well, you're not. I mean, you're. The funny thing to me is that, well, I think a lot of people would say you're not moderate. You aren't moderate in a lot of your views at all, but you don't fit in that lane of Republicans who have switched parties now after Trump. We know quite a few of those. Mm-hmm. They're in the media now. They were strong Republicans before Trump. After Trump, all of a sudden, not only did they stop. I mean, you and I absolutely disagree on a woman's right to choose. Mm-hmm. We disagree on gun control, and I'll keep fighting you, and you'll keep fighting me on both of those until the end of time, and that's fine. We disagree on a lot of things, but I do at least have some weird respect for the fact that even though you hated Trump and you did not want him to be president, as he was president, you continued to dislike him, but you continued to support those causes, which it pissed me off. But we have seen other people who have such a dislike for Trump that all of a sudden they change their opinion on gun control. They change their opinion on a woman's right to choose. They change their opinion on any and all of those issues that I guess most conservatives
of Trump derangement syndrome for me on all sides. When
Trump derangement syndrome, you call it.
It's like a term that people use.
It's probably in the DSM now, right?
I just think when he becomes the lens in which you see everything and feel everything and emote everything, and there's just people where I remember there was this one commentator who was on her honeymoon and was tweeting about Trump on her honeymoon, and I was like, first of all, get to what you're supposed to be doing on your honeymoon. And second of all, like, if you can't have any space of sacredness where he doesn't consume your brain, like, I'm sorry, motherfuckers, I have more reason than anybody in America, anybody, to have him consume my brain. I only think about Trump when he's doing something crazy in the news or someone is talking to me about it. I don't actively wake up and think about him. I don't see the world through his worldview. I think he was a horrific president and a demagogue in a lot of ways, and he has done intense damage to this country.
And he's dangerous and could come back if we're not careful.
Yes, yes, that's what I think as well. And he put me through a lot of emotional pain. But I cannot stereotype everyone who voted for him. I can't stereotype everyone in America who feels like they have been abandoned and lost and that they aren't being heard. And I also have to, and I hate this terminology, but I will say it, I do have to check my privilege in a lot of spaces when I'm talking about him because, you know, I still have a media contract. I work for the Daily Mail. I'm gainfully employed. I come from a, wealthy family and had a famous dad. Like, I have every privilege in the world. And so it's easier for me to have more options in my life than it is, and you and I were talking about this earlier today, like someone in Appalachia whose family has been savaged by the opioid addiction and who feels like people on the left don't understand their cultural experience. And I think when people have nothing to believe in, they'll believe in a demagogue. And we've seen it historically over and over again. And I worry about, you and I think, and mark this moment in time, November 22nd, Clay Aiken and Meghan McCain are saying Trump has a potential to get reelected unless we all stop it. And also that means people on the left and people on the right, and Republicans can't nominate him again. And Democrats can't keep doing things where they just have this like abject, repulsive reaction to anyone with an R next to their name. And I fear, and that's the thing I think you and I also agree on, is we both fear what a second term Trump would be like.
Amen. And I more than anything, yes. And I still, where we disagree is I agree. I believe that the policies of Democrats, and we can disagree here, I believe strongly strongly that the policies of Democrats are better for people in this country, and I believe that most people like our policies more when they're asked about them in a vacuum. So I want to run on those. And you might want me to run on those too, because you may disagree, and that's fine. But let's get back to talking about
Sure.
the issues and the actual policies that affect people's lives instead of, constantly talking about arguments that you're not winning on your side, the far right's not winning on your side, and some of the arguments that I'm not winning on our side either. So is that the solution, Meghan? How the heck are we going to get along?
I think we're going to get along because there's no other option, because we're like at a break. I truly believe we're at like a cultural breaking point right now. I read this poll that said that like 48% of Democrats think that America should be split in two, and 52% of Republicans think that we should be split into Americas. That is not an America I want to live in. It's not the America I want to raise my child in. Excuse me. I don't believe in that kind of thinking. I also think that some of the greatest policies in American history and some of the greatest achievements we've ever done has been the combination of bipartisanship. On a personal level, I've had a very intense, I would go so far as to say traumatic 5 years of my life, personally and professionally, that I would not have sustained myself through without my dad's close friends who are Democrats. By the way, his Democrat friends are way more awesome than his Republican friends, but I'm just going to put that right there for you, Clay. You're laughing because you know what that means. And then on a personal level, having friends in just my life, because it's like when people are people, we talk about politics a lot, but like, the first thing I think of when I think of you isn't that you're a raging liberal, which you are. And I think that, I don't know, I think that people don't want to live like this. That's another thing I keep saying is, who likes to live like this? I don't want to live in a place where our kids can't hang out and have a good time because we have different political opinions, or we can't find anything to come together on. I mean, there's just so many issues on the left that I've come more towards the middle on, especially when it comes to like paid family leave and prison reform in the past few years. And I'm open to having my mind changed. And I think most Americans are. I still believe in that this is a dark time we're going to pull out of. I really do. In my heart, in my head. I really do. I hope you do too.